Welcome. We gather today as witnesses to the past, celebrants of the present, and custodians of the future. And it is in that spirit that a fundraising drive, spearheaded by the 2 Center Street Restoration Project, is underway to save this place of worship, community, and tradition.
Methodism first came to the island in the late 1700s, and that attracted a wide range of people, black, white, rich, poor. After the War of 1812, whaling really took off. Nantucket was clearly the vanguard of American whaling. The economy was going nowhere but up. You had churches springing up all over town. It was a very vibrant place. You had baptisms occurring down on the wharf. In 1823, what became known as the chapel was built on what is now Center Street. That became the center of Methodism.
The design, it's really very indicative of the times, that has simplicity, a beauty, a restraint, but then a lot of detail in certain places. It gives everyone who passes by a kind of emotional tug, a feeling that this is a special building. The dramatic gabled facade, the Greek Revival front with the porch, 6 Ionic columns. There's a wonderful simplicity about the pews. The panel doors were to keep the heat in where people had foot warmers. The back of the pews is one single board with the mahogany top rail that ends in a beautiful swirling design.
We need only look at the work it took to raise these walls and the work it will take to keep them standing to see why God brings us together. It nourishes our souls to come together and help each other.
I've always had sympathy myself for homeless people, but never had any idea that I would become one. I wound up with no place to live but a good job. And I would sleep right here on the floor on these red mats, or sometimes on the floor between the pews. The first time I was ever in this building, somehow I knew at that time that this was a place that was going to be special to me. I can just envision the people who built it, nailing the boards and sawing the wood, and going down to the boat yards and scrounging the lumber from old derelict boats. It was a huge undertaking, and it must have taken great faith to do it. The spirit that they left with it stays with it. Occasionally, somebody will come in, they'll sit and meditate for an hour. And I like to watch them when they leave, because you can tell by the look on their face when they leave that they feel better than when they came in. In order to experience it, you have to come here by yourself and just meditate for a few minutes.
Part of what makes this building so special is that it has evolved over time. In 1840, the large gable was added. You can see the old roof, then the higher gabled roof with the wonderful mortise and tendon joints. The pegs, in some cases, reach 2 feet long, and there's 60-foot-long timbers that span the roof. When one thinks of Nantucket, one can think of the Moors, but the architecture is what people take with them as their memory of an earlier time.
In 1846, a fire broke out in a hat factory on Main Street, and the fire rapidly spread throughout the main core district of town. And they got to the point where they were trying to dynamite buildings to stop the fire in its tracks. The fire department was preparing to blow up the Methodist church. Tradition has it that Mariah Mitchell pleaded with them not to blow up the church, and because of that we have one of the finest examples of architecture on the island.
From this building we reach out not only to God and to each other, but to the larger community. Art and religion have always gone hand in hand with personal healing and empowerment.
I've always thought of the theater as a reminder of our common humanity and a link with the past and a conduit to the future. We'd been here working in this space since 1990 with children's theater program, evening plays, late night theater, It's downtown, center location. The Interfaith Council meets here. The Alliance for Mentally Ill meets here. Upstairs is the slideshow. The Cross Rip Coffee House started a couple of winters back. It's in full use.
For over 100 years, we have shared the music flowing from this Appleton pipe organ, a piece of history in itself.
When I got here, Zena Giffen and Beulah Patterson told me that they alternately had been playing the organ for 50 years. It's one of 5 of these organs. And one of the other 5 in the United States is in the balcony of the music wing of the Metropolitan in New York. So this is a real treasure.
In the 1960s, a determined congregation using wheelbarrows and shovels cleaned out the basement to make Fellowship Hall.
This whole cellar was nothing. My father would come down here one night a week with a group of men. And the guy would pickaxe the clay and loosen it up, and another guy would shovel it, and another guy would take the wheelbarrow and wheel it over to the conveyor belt, and they'd dump it on the conveyor belt. They did this for years.
A different kind of determination is needed if this historic building is to be preserved. The determination to raise enough money to fund a restoration project. The work that needs to be done is extensive. We need to raise $3 million to complete the restoration of this building. Donations will both preserve and create history because the architecture of this building describes the flow of Nantucket history.
Gathered here in this beautiful old building, it is easy to feel we are linked to an earlier time. It is easy to feel the history surrounding us.
The architecture is one of the best ways that we can have an understanding of the past. And if we don't have an understanding of the past, we have a hard time charting a course for the future.